What if I told you that the God worshipped by millions in cathedrals, temples, and synagogues around the world might not be the Father Jesus came to reveal? What if the scriptures contained a hidden war, a spiritual code buried beneath centuries of dogma where Jesus unmasks the true face of the Old Testament deity and calls him by his name? Hit ready. What you are about to hear will shake the foundations of everything you have been taught about faith, religion, and salvation. This is not a Sunday school lesson. This is a spiritual excavation. We are digging up a secret that the early church fathers tried to burn. A secret that explains the blood, the wars, and the fear that has haunted human spirituality for millennia. We are told that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. But how do we reconcile the God who orders the slaughter of infants in the Old Testament with a Jesus who stops an execution to forgive a sinner in the New? Many know Jesus as the Savior, but few know him as the Revealer, the one who stood before the religious elite of his time, men who claimed to serve God, and declared, "You are of your father, the devil, and the lusts of your father you will do." He was a murderer from the beginning. He wasn't speaking metaphorically. He wasn't just insulting them. He was identifying a usurper, an entity the Gnostics called the Archon, a being who demanded sacrifice, who thrived on fear, and who hid behind the mask of the Creator. Tonight, we will trace the clues from the canonical Gospels to the forbidden texts of Nag Hammadi. We will confront the uncomfortable truth about the Lord of Hosts, and we will reveal the name that destroys centuries of spiritual deception. This video is not for the curious, it is for the brave. Once you see the truth about the two gods, you cannot unsee it. Are you ready to meet the God Jesus actually served? To understand the magnitude of this revelation, we must first confront the cognitive dissonance that every believer has felt, but few dare to voice. On one hand, we have the Lord of Hosts in the Hebrew Scriptures, a deity who presents himself as a warrior. In 1 Samuel 15, this God orders King Saul to attack the Ammon. The command is specific and chilling. Do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey. Read that again. Child and infant. In Numbers 31, this same God is angered when his soldiers spare the women and children of Midian, ordering them to slaughter every male child and every non-virgin woman, keeping only the young virgins for themselves. This God establishes laws that demand death for gathering sticks on the Sabbath. He accepts the smell of burning animal flesh as a sweet aroma he hallows. He is angry. He is tribal. Now, look at Jesus. A man who says, "You have heard it said, an eye for an eye. But I tell you, love your enemies." A man who says, "I desire mercy, not sacrifice." A man who reveals a Father who sends rain on the just and the unjust alike. A Father who does not judge. A Father who is love. The Church tells us these are the same being. They say, God works in mysterious ways, or that was a different dispensation. They try to glue these two contradictory images together. But the early Christians, the ones who walked in the mystic traditions before the Roman Empire, hijacked the faith, knew better. They didn't try to reconcile the contradiction. They exposed it. The Gnostics, whose texts were buried in the sands of Egypt for 1,600 years, taught that the world was not created by the ultimate Father of light. They taught that this material realm, a realm of predation, death, and decay, was crafted by a lesser, flawed deity, an Archon ruler named Yaldabaoth. In the Apocryphon of John, a text Jesus' inner circle studied, this entity is described as blind, not physically blind, but spiritually blind, cut off from the pleroma. The fullness of the true God Yaldabaoth looked at the dark matter he had shaped and, seeing no one else, declared, "I am God, and there is no other." Isaiah 45, Banding 5. But the Gnostic texts say this was not a statement of truth. It was a statement of arrogance. It was the first lie, a cosmic lie spoken by a blind God who mistook his isolation for supremacy. When Jesus arrived, he didn't come to fix Yaldabaoth's religion. He came to dismantle it. Have you ever noticed that Jesus never calls the Lord of Hosts Father? He never quotes the violent commandments to The Gnostics understood this code. From the beginning refers to Genesis. Who introduced death into the world? Who cursed humanity? Who regretted making man and drowned the world in a flood? Jesus is identifying the spiritual lineage of the religious system. He is saying, your system is built on death because your God is a God of death. He calls this entity the father of lies. Why? Because this entity convinced humanity that he was the true God. That was the great lie. The lie that keeps the soul trapped in a cycle of guilt and fear. This explains why the religious leaders hated him. Not because he was a nice man teaching love, but because he was a whistleblower. He was exposing the Archon system. This system relies on 3 pillars: fear, guilt, and transaction. Fear of punishment, guilt for being human, and transaction, do this ritual, pay this tithe, kill this animal, and maybe the angry God won't destroy you. The Archon feeds on this energy. The Gnostics called it lush, the energy of suffering and submission. Jesus dismantled all 3 pillars. He removed fear with love. He removed guilt with grace. And he ended the transaction by becoming the final sacrifice, not to appease an angry father, but to break the wheel of blood once and for all. When he died, the veil of the temple tore. We are taught this meant access to God was granted. But look deeper. The veil hid the Holy of Holies, the dwelling place of the Old Testament presence. When it tore, the space was exposed as empty. The Archon had fled. The power of the hidden system was broken by the public display of true love. The Apostle Paul, in his most mystical moments, saw this too. In 2 Corinthians 4:4, he speaks of the God of this age, who blinds the minds of unbelievers. Note the lowercase g. The God of this age, this eon, this material construct, is not the Father. It is the ruler of this matrix. But this is not just ancient history. The Archon didn't die. He just changed his name. He changed his suit. Today, the system of Yaldabaoth is alive and well. It has woven itself into the fabric of our modern existence. We see it in religions that preach exclusion, hatred, and holy wars. We see it in the prosperity gospel. That turns spirituality into a financial transaction. If you pay God, he will bless you. That is the Archon's logic. We see it in the guilt-tripping doctrines that tell you you were born broken, depraved, and worthless. This is the Archon's primary frequency. Unworthiness. If you feel unworthy, you are easy to control. If you are afraid of a cosmic punisher, you will pay for protection. You will submit to authority without question. How many of you grew up terrified of God? How many of you were told that if you made a mistake, God would burn you forever? That is the trauma of the Archon. That is spiritual abuse passed down through generations. A virus of the mind designed to disconnect you from your own divinity. Jesus came to liberate us from that trauma. Ikamato. Say the kingdom is within you. This was his most dangerous teaching. If the kingdom is inside you, then you don't need the temple. You don't need the priest. You don't need the law. You are not a slave to a cosmic tyrant. You are a fractal of the infinite source, a divine spark trapped in matter, trying to remember where it came from. The Gnostics called this spark the pneuma. The Archon wants to keep that spark dim. He wants you distracted, fearful, and looking outside yourself for salvation. Jesus wants to fan that spark into a flame. The modern parallel is clear. We are living in a time of apocalypsis, which literally means the unveiling. The old structures of control are crumbling. The old narratives of fear are losing their power. People are leaving dogmatic religion in droves, not because they are losing faith, but because they are finding truth. They are rejecting the God of the Archon to find the Father of Christ. They are realizing that true spirituality is not about obeying a master, but about. So, we stand at the crossroads. The question is no longer theological. It is personal. Who are you serving? Are you serving the God of the storm, the deity of transaction and fear? Or are you serving the Father of light, the source of